Welcome to the podcast, everyone. Today, you'll get to hear a conversation I had with Trey Boone. Trey is a CEO with more than 37 years of experience in the human resources industry. Trey focuses on the design and implementation of initiatives that help organizations solve complex human resource issues. Trey established eSOURCES in 2000 after serving as the Vice President of Human Resources for SCANA Corporation, a Columbia, South Carolina Fortune 500 company with more than 6,000 employees. Trey graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from the University of South Carolina. Go Gamecocks. Trey is a Leadership South Carolina graduate, Southern Electrical Exchange Management Program graduate from the University of Georgia, and a certified compensation professional. This conversation was everything as it relates to how we lead and manage ourselves. Trey provides some great advice from his years of experience, some practical tips, and even, as I called it during the episode, golden thoughts for all of us to consider and reflect upon as workers, employees, business owners, parents, spouses, friends. This is good. Enjoy.
Now available. You deserve to love your job. How to find your purpose and enjoy your life. You may not have learned this growing up, but you deserve to love your job. You will spend more time at work than in any other activity in your life, and you deserve to love it. Research tells us that people who love their work are twice as likely to enjoy their life. This book will help you create a blueprint to help you fulfill your purpose, love your job, and live the life you were designed to live. Now available at Amazon.
Trey, thank you so much for joining today's episode. I am really looking forward to this conversation. And for those who don't know, for the audience, you and I worked together previously. And I was thinking back at the time you were, I think what today would become called a CHRO, head of HR for the organization. I was coming in as an OD consultant, and that was my first real full-time OD job. Like, I'd done some internships, some consulting work, but that was my first real full-time OD job working with you all. And then I was remembering kind of how you've been at pivot points in my life. And then I was remembering when I was thinking about going into business, I called you for your advice because you had already made that transition several years ago. And I still remember the advice you gave me. You were like, Arlene, if you burn it down, I think I put this in the book, actually, that's how pivotal it was. If you burn it down and just totally like it fails, you could always go get another job. And I was like, at the time, I hadn't thought about that, but just this idea that you can always make a new decision if one decision doesn't work well was actually freeing to me. It freed me then, and it actually has freed me now. So I really appreciate your advice. I love your perspective on things. So I'm excited other people get to hear this conversation.
That's a conversation that I used to have with, one of my partners all the time when we first started this, because he was worried, and he said, well, what if this isn't going to work? I said, we'll go get real jobs then, because this is really, it's what we love doing. And I don't even think of it as a real job, it's always been easy. So, and that was 22 years ago. So we haven't burned it down yet. But
I was going to say, I couldn't believe that. I was looking at some of the things on your website, and I was like, wait a minute, you've been in business 22 years on this side. That's kind of post your career you already had on the other side internally.
Yes, it is. That's yes. I'm old and decrepit, and so to have almost a 25-year corporate career, and then go into now running your own business for 22 years. It's been a exciting journey, to say the least.
Yeah, that's a blessing. That's amazing. So congratulations on 22 years. And I'm excited to talk about this topic because I feel like when you think of leading self and just how we do that better, that's something that has been important for me in my life. It is important today. And that's the kind of thing that will be important tomorrow. Like, it's a core life skill, I think. And the better we get at it, the better our lives are and the better we are. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your perspective on this, because it's kind of an eternal topic. you know.
I agree, and I run into it all the time with our clients and just in the business settings. So
Yeah. Okay, good. So let's just jump in then. When I think about leading self, I know a lot of people, when they hear the word leadership, they really think about other people, like my manager, or you're in a role where you're leading other people. What do you think about when we say leading self? What does that mean for you?
I think it is sort of an introspective look at yourself and just developing this tremendous sense of self-awareness so you understand where you are. And I ask this question when we do leadership training all the time, is that if you really can't lead yourself, how do you expect to be able to lead others?
Mm.
And we talk about the definition of leadership all the time, Arlene, as really just your ability to influence other people. Okay. And when you lead yourself, you've got to be able to influence yourself. You've got to be able to talk to yourself and understand and have those conversations and be able to lead yourself and take action. So that's really what I think about when I think about that.
Yeah, being able to influence yourself, which can be a challenge. I think
It can
about.
be because a lot of times it's hard to face the truth, and it's hard to face some of the things when you've done things wrong, and to own up to that and be able to say to yourself and then certainly to others, yep, I made a mistake there and hose that up and need to do something different.
Yeah.
So, and if you can't do that with your own life, it's going to be very hard to do that in any professional setting or in anything that you do where you're leaders. And we talk about just the everyday leadership concept that everybody is a leader. You're a leader in your family, church, your PTO, your children's coaching, softball, anything, and you've got to be able to influence folks, and to do that, you got to be able to manage and lead yourself.
Yeah, and I love the idea of the everyday leader, because I do think when you hear the term leader, you kind of first go to work. Like the first thing I think about as a leader is like, oh, my manager at work. Like you don't really think about the opportunities we all have to lead in just life in general. Yeah. So sometimes just opening ourselves up to know that no, you actually have lots of opportunities to lead.
Well, and that's why we like the definition of your ability to influence someone. Okay. And when you really stop and think about that, it's all the components that go into the emotional intelligence. Okay. Because for you to be able to influence someone, they have to trust you. Okay. And they have to be willing to listen and understand and follow you. Okay. You can only be a leader if you have folks that are willing to follow you and you're able to influence them. And so that's exactly what you need to be able to do. And so we see that and talk about that all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about leading self. I can think of a few sports games I've been to where parents probably weren't doing our best at leading self, showing ourselves best in those kind of scenarios. So like, what's an example, would you say, Trey, you think about with like leading self? Like what would be an example for people to understand?
I think it's an example of where you have a situation to deal with, and I'll go back to talking about what you think about. I see parents misbehave at sporting events all the time, and they're on the sidelines, and they don't think about how their actions impact their children, the other children, and the other adults around them. And they have to be able to think through and realize, here's the right behavior pattern to set, and not, just it's easy to get caught up in emotion, and that's what happens. And you're really talking about, you're understanding yourself and being able to control your own emotions.
Yeah.
That's hard for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's very hard. Depending on the scenario, that can be, I've been in a couple games where, because to your point, because of other parents' behaviors, I'm like, okay, I don't condone acting out, but I understand it because the emotion gets so overwhelming.
Yes.
So how do you think someone would know if they're good at leading self? Maybe one of those things is controlling emotion. I don't know. What do you think is like, how would you know if I'm doing a pretty good job at leading myself?
I think you have to ask yourself, are you setting a good example, okay, for others to follow, okay? And I think, another way is, are you really achieving whatever goals it is you have set for yourself? And how are you achieving those? There's a right way and a wrong way to get the results. And I deal with this all the time with our clients, and where we have employees who get results, but the way they get the results is horrible. Nobody wants to work with them. They're very disruptive, they're mean, they're rude, and so, but they get results. So I think you have to ask yourself, are you meeting the goals in your own life? Where do you want to be? And how are you going about getting those? Okay. And the relationships that you're building along the way, because that's what this is really all about, for you to be able to manage and achieve those goals.
Yeah. And and I think that's a good way to think about it. Like, am I being a good example, and am I getting things done that are important to me, but also getting them done in the right way?
Yes.
Because there's probably areas of our life we could probably say, I lead myself really good in that area, but over there, like, am I getting the goals I want in this space of my life? Am I leading myself well in that area? Maybe not.
And I think that's exactly what folks have to do. And it's hard, and a lot of folks won't do it, is ask themselves the hard questions. Okay, am I really doing what I should be doing in this area? And we can always, find excuses, or, didn't have enough time, I had to do this, the kids had this, my spouse had to do, and make excuses, okay, and go into the victim mode and not really own, the circumstances, and own your behavior, and whether you did it or you didn't. So I think that's a huge part of recognizing that you're in control of all of this. You own it. You can't really control what happens to you, but what you can control is how you react to it. That's what you need to be thinking about.
Yeah.
And there are times in my corporate career where I look back on it and I think, wow, they probably should have fired me. I'm glad they didn't, but looking back on that, they should have, because of how I reacted. And the big piece to that is really learning from that and understanding, okay, wow, that was almost, I perceived that as a personal attack, and I reacted badly to that. And so learning and growing from that is what I think we're all challenged to do, and it'll help us in the long run with every one of our relationships.
Yeah, I could totally see that. Just the acknowledgement of, when we messed up, and being willing to do that quickly and honestly and humbly, like, that alone can be a challenge for a lot of us. And when you're in your emotions, it probably is a challenge for all of us, but being willing to do that, I could see that personally and professionally, not only helps you get better, but certainly I'm sure helps all your relationships, without a doubt.
It does. And what you're really doing is, when you do that and you can go through exactly what you described, you're growing. Okay. You are growing. And we talk about this, typically in a lot of our training sessions with our clients. We talk about, there's only two states of being. Okay. You're either in a growth mode or you're in a deterioration mode. There is no static. Okay. And so to me, I always want to be in a growth mode, and I'm always looking and thinking and asking myself, what did I do to help that situation? What did I do to hurt it? How could I have done that better? It's a constant review and analysis for you. So the next interaction you have, you're growing and getting better.
Yeah, I love that. You're either growing or deteriorating. We're kind of fooling ourselves if we think we're standing still.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, you are.
We're kind of fooling ourselves.
And so that's that actually is a Mark Twain quote. Okay. So I would never try to take credit for that.
That's good though. I mean,
I wish I was that clever. I
could see that. It's so funny. I was talking to a friend and she had just gotten into a new role that she had been looking forward to and, kind of thought was like a pinnacle role for her. And once she got into it, she figured out how much more she needed to learn. So to your point around, I think sometimes we think we arrive at a place of leading self or leadership or whatever it is. And it's like, then you arrive there and you realize, oh, like there's still a long road ahead of me in terms of just continually growing and getting better. Yeah, I could see that.
I think you're exactly right. And I think we all have, and during my corporate career, as I would get a promotion, I'd be looking for the next step and the next step, and realizing, after I got to each step, I was like, wow, this is a lot different than I thought. And now I have to do this, and just that growth and learning in and of itself, you're sort of like, holy cow, this is different than I thought.
Yeah.
And so you have to be able to talk to yourself, okay, which is, I think, a big piece of all of this in leading yourself. You got to be able to talk to yourself and be honest with yourself and say, wow, this is not what I thought, but what am I going to do? How am I going to handle this? And have those conversations.
And is that something you do, Trey? Is that something you've done or seen other people is that a normal conversation you're having with yourself? Do you choose moments of reflection? Like, how have you been able to kind of really learn? It sounds like one of the first steps is awareness of where we need to grow, awareness of mistakes we've made. Like, how have you been able to do that? Because, work's really busy. Life is really busy. I think it's easy sometimes to get into just a do mode without really the reflection part of it.
And, Arlene, that word, I love that word, because I think that is a part of the growth and the learning that most folks skip over and they really don't do. Okay. And the reflection piece of that is really when you're asking yourself the hard questions. Okay. How did this happen? And what did it, how did I let that happen? And I try to, spend time. I love doing that. I'm a morning person. So I'm usually in the office, at 6:30 in the morning, and have an hour to an hour and a half before the phones and emails start going crazy. And I'm thinking about what's ahead for the day, as well as what happened yesterday. How did that interaction with the client go? If we were counseling that employee, if we were terminating that employee, what could we have done better? What can we learn from that? And what did we forget to do, or what did we do that maybe we shouldn't have done? So I think for me, it's sort of become a part of the daily ritual that's what I do. I spend a lot of time driving too, and so I get to spend a lot of time thinking and asking and just reflecting upon that. So
okay, I could see both of those. That would be interesting for people to even take that challenge. And in terms of driving, sometimes we spend so much time consuming stuff, music, other information, but if you have that time driving, or can carve out that time in the morning to not spend it consuming more, but reflecting, I could see that being really helpful, really powerful for people.
I think it is. And I think a lot of times we have to think about really asking ourselves the right questions and the hard questions, which a lot of times we don't want to do. And so a lot of the time that I spend with some of my clients and some of the upper level clients is almost a sounding board, and I have to ask them questions all the time, the CEOs or the board chairs, and then we have to go through and do that. And so, part of that is really thinking about, how, if I'm asking them those questions, I need to be asking myself those questions.
What's an example of a tough question or a question you might ask someone at that level, and then also might ask yourself that, what are some of the questions you might use in that kind of a setting?
I think, the first question I typically ask them is there's been an interaction and something has happened. And I'll ask them the question, well, what did you think about that? And how did you react? Because I want them to really look inside themselves and say, what was I thinking about that? And a lot of times they will say, well, I was angry, I was disappointed, and that drove how they behaved. Okay. And so, or they were surprised, and so you have to, I'm constantly asking them, so they will be thinking about it. I'm making them do the reflection on that somebody else is doing, that they hopefully will learn to do on their own.
Yeah. I can see that, because even getting to what you were thinking starts to get to your point about emotions and how much that can then drive our reaction.
Yes. And we do a lot where we're talking about performance management, giving feedback, and and I use myself in the corporate example a lot. And I remember getting some feedback from my manager, where I had been doing a lot of presentations on a new compensation plan, and I'd been on the road. We had lots of different locations, so we would go to all these locations, and 6,000 employees, and I was given the presentations about the changes in the compensation system. And I was done, and we were having lunch one day, and he looked at me, he told me, he said, I got some feedback for you. He said, when you're doing those presentations, now, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And I had no idea, what X, Y, and Z was, because what was flashing through my mind was, you've been waiting for 6 months to give me this feedback that would help me. It was designed to help me. And my thought was, I've probably done 25 presentations since then, and you're waiting to give me this feedback.
Yeah.
That's the learning. And when I step back and evaluate myself, and I should have said, that's great. Thank you for that. And you're right. And I'm going to incorporate that. And then what I should have said was, why did it take you so long to tell me that? Okay.
Yeah.
That's the learning that I wanted to know, was because, am I so unapproachable? Did you think I was going to explode? What help me understand why it took you 6 months to give me that feedback?
Right.
That's the learning that you've got to be able to do. That at the time, what was going through my mind is, that was, you've been holding this for 6 months.
Yes.
What?
Yeah.
So, it's that sort of learning that you have to get past that emotion of, I'm angry because you didn't tell me about this, and I could have been improving in the last 6 months. Instead of, still, it's great feedback. I love to have the feedback.
Right.
I just wish it was timely. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that's taken a high degree of accountability. It's saying, just to say, even in that, to be able to, for someone to be able to say, was there anything I was doing that contributed to this person not giving the feedback? Yeah, that takes a level of reflection that I think many of us don't have. Like, we would still be stuck on that first point of what took you 6 months ago. I mean, and you could just spin on that one thing and never get to maybe the deeper point of like what was going on in our relationship or with me, or like what caused you to wait. Like, that's a really good question.
And that's really, that's where we all need to be. And it is being able to control, those emotions and think through that without reacting and without, sort of damaging that relationship. Okay. But being able to continue to grow and to realize that maybe I'm doing something that is giving them this perception. And I think, a lot of times the whole issue of perception is something that most folks struggle with. Okay. And we have to go through lots of explanations about that now. Every time we're doing a training session, because if everybody has a perception, and their perceptions are never wrong. They are how they feel. Okay. And when someone typically gives you their perception and it differs from your intent, we tell them their perception's wrong. Oh, your perception's wrong. And it's not wrong. And it's what they can't get past is, well, that my intent was not that. And so you either didn't listen or it's your problem because this was my intent. We don't own the fact that we gave them that perception by something we did, something we said, the tone of our voice, the volume, the words we used, we gave them that perception. It doesn't make a difference what your intent is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I feel like I could take that to work. Certainly, I could take that to marriage. That's what I was thinking about. I was thinking about how many times in relationships how many times you talk about the perception and you're arguing back and forth about someone else's perception without ever asking the question, well, what am I doing that's contributing that perception?
Yes. And a lot of times when we're doing some of that training, Arlene, I will use the example. Okay. And this rarely ever happens. But when my wife tells me I hurt her feelings, okay, my answer cannot be no, I didn't. Okay.
Right.
Okay. But my answer needs to be, I'm sorry, that was not my intent, because I never intend to hurt her feelings. But if I do, and you have to own that. So it is recognizing that our intentions don't always match up to the perception that you're giving other people. Yes. And I don't care whether that's work, church, the grocery store, anywhere. It happens all the time.
Yeah, that's a phrase I need to add it. That's a really good. I'm so sorry. That was not my intent.
Like, exactly right. Yes. I learned that early on.
That was not my intent. That is
correct. And
that's a golden phrase.
It's and it helps. And what I followed up by what I meant to say was this. Okay. And hopefully that you don't keep going down a dark deep hole.
Right. I'm sorry, that wasn't my intent either. Right. I could.
You want me to send that to your husband?
No, I need that as my own golden phrase. I'll use it first. I'm use it first. See how it works. He won't see it coming. I'll use it first. I am so sorry. That was not my intent. That is, I mean, because that happens. I can think about how many times in leadership situations, a lot of times if you are the manager of a team or leader of a team, people take your words more heavily or seriously sometimes than you intend. This can also happen with children, so they may take something from it that may have been a part of it, but maybe you didn't mean for it to land that heavy on them or something. And just being able to say, oh, I'm so sorry, that was not my intent. Like,
yes. And absolutely. And that's what we need to be able to really, when you stop and think about the self-awareness, is understand how that could be perceived. I spend a lot of time thinking about this, especially when I'm talking with either, the CEOs or the board chairs, or even doing an employee counseling, if I use these words, how is that going to be perceived? How might they feel about that? And if you think about that on the front end, it'll probably help you change your words and change your tone and think through this.
Yeah. Even before you say it. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And and I think that and then if it does go wrong, you're already prepared and that wasn't your intent.
I love
So
that.
I think that's what we have a lot of folks try to do.
Yeah. Trey, in your just in all your experiences, how have you seen self-leadership maybe either help someone's career or get in the way of someone from a career standpoint? Like, how have you seen this make a difference for people?
I think, Arlene, if you're able to lead yourself, one of the things that you're really doing is sort of creating the right mindset, and you're having an open mindset, and you're willing to realize that you are learning, you're going to make mistakes. We talk about all the time the concept that if you're not making mistakes, you're not working on things hard enough. Okay.
Yeah.
And I've told this to my team when I was in the corporate, and to my team now, is like, I don't really care if you make mistakes. Okay. What I don't want you to do is just repeat the same mistake over and over. I want you to learn from that. And so I think when you are managing yourself, and when you can learn from that and realize, wow, I was rushing. I thought, it was so important to get this done. I wanted to be perceived as, wow, you're so quick, and you learn from that. That's going to help you grow. And I will tell you, I don't have a client that doesn't want those type of employees. They want them, and they will continue to grow. I think a lot of times, we're human beings, okay, and whether it's your ego, or you struggle with trying to be right all the time. You can't, those type of things that really will keep you from managing yourself, okay, because you're not going to tell yourself the truth, even when you're wrong. You're gonna spin it. You're gonna be right, and you're gonna mince words, and you're gonna say, well, no, you didn't understand, or that's not what I said, or Arlene.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're shaking your head. Are you writing these phrases down too?
I'm going to try not. I'm going to try to forget those phrases. They sound a little familiar to me, but I'm trying to forget those phrases.
It's those are the people that are going to get derailed. Okay. And those are the people that a lot of times will get results. Okay. But I will tell you that those folks have titles that they use, and it's what we call positional leadership. Okay. And they really don't have followers. Okay. Because nobody wants to follow them, because they're just, they're not very nice, and it's all about them, and they never give the team credit, but they have a title. Okay. And those are the folks that get results. But how they get the results, and if they ever get a 360, the employees just provide them with some good insight, and they don't believe it, and they just refuse to listen. No, they're wrong, and it's they won't grow and listen. I've seen that. We've done exit interviews, and I've sat down and said, here's what your employees have said. No, they didn't really say that. I'm thinking, really? Okay.
Actually, they did.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I was there and wrote it down. This is what they said.
Right.
So, but they again, couldn't really manage themselves. Couldn't look at that and say, "Wow, I'm stunned, because that was not my intent." But if that's what they believe, then I need to do something else. Okay, I need to try a different approach. I need to make a change. And when you do that, you're owning that. okay? And it becomes you. And so you need to make a change. Now, what are you going to do? And when you decide that, you're setting your goal, okay? And then you're managing yourself. Am I achieving that? And so I'm taking ownership of this, and you know, I'm going to try something different. Maybe some of it works, maybe some of it doesn't, but at least, you know, you're trying, and you're trying to achieve, you know, whatever that goal or objective is.
Yeah, I mean, the willingness to try something different, because it will feel uncomfortable. It'll feel, but just that willingness to try, and even your point around, I love what you say to your teams, which is, I'm okay if you make mistakes. Like that gives people so much more just like breathing room, freedom to be willing to try to do it different, to try new things. That kind of, I think, creates a space for people. Like, I'm okay if you make mistakes. I just don't want us to repeat them. I think that gives you kind of a little more freedom for that willingness to try something different and be more willing, maybe even to learn from the mistakes you have, if you have that kind of a mentality.
Well, and I think then, you know, what goes along with that is when they do make a mistake, the question I ask them all the time is, well, okay, so what'd you learn from that?
Yeah.
What'd you learn from that? Because that's where you really, now in your own brain, you're asking yourself the question, what did I learn? What should I have done better? And you know, I've made some costly mistakes, you know, in this venture. You know, I lost a $250,000 a year client, and there was one person who lost that client, and it was me. Okay, and it was because, you know, I wasn't paying attention to really what I wasn't listening, and I wasn't thinking about what was going on. And you know, that's a learning experience. And you know, sort of like, yeah, I'm gonna have to make sure that doesn't happen again. Okay. And so it's you know, those lessons are never easy, but you have to, you know, grow from those lessons. And I think we have. I know I have.
Yeah, that's good. That is good. I mean, even from that situation, which I'm sure was like, that's a big loss. But being willing to say, you know what, let me learn from it. Let me figure out what I can. I'm not going to waste it. You know, at least it happened. I might as well not waste the loss and try to figure out what I can learn from it.
Absolutely. And I stepped back and went through and evaluated it and replayed conversations and recognized that it was happening over. It was a slow death. Okay. But realized and you know, told everybody, you know, in my organization here, I was like, yeah, I screwed that up. So I should have done this. I should have seen this coming. I didn't anticipate. I wasn't listening and didn't see what was actually being said and happening. And you know, it was a learning experience.
Right. Wow. That's huge. And even to share it with your team in an honest way, like that's something a lot of leaders have trouble with. You know, a lot of people, I wouldn't say leaders, a lot of people have trouble with, is that kind of back to that openness, like you being self-aware, but also being open enough and honest enough and humble enough to share it with other people so they can learn from it too.
You know, if you're not going to be vulnerable, okay, then your employees are going to be, they're going to have a hard time trusting you.
Yeah.
Okay? And if they don't trust you, all right, how in the world do you think you can influence them? Which is leadership, being able to influence them.
Yeah.
You know, so I talked to them, I said, look, we have this client. This is what we need to do for this client. And let me explain to you why. And this is how we do that. And they believe that because I've established that trust and credibility. And so, you know, they're willing to get on board and make whatever changes we need to make.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Trey, how do you think we can, like, as we build our own ability to lead ourselves, how do you think we can encourage this in other people as well? So, you know, there may be our families, like this is a kind of skill that if you can lead yourself well, it opens up so much for you. It opens up so much learning and opportunity and doors. Are there any things you've done or you think would help in trying to instill this in others as well?
I think, again, I go back to setting that example, okay, and always asking yourself, how, what did I do? How could it have been perceived? What, were there children around that may have seen this? And I was hitting tennis with my wife the other day, and on the court next to us was a father and his daughter, and my wife hit a shot that I really didn't care for, and I turned to her and I told her, and I said, boy, it's a good thing that there's really children on the other court, or I would tell you what I really think of that shot. And the father on the other court was laughing, but it's being aware and realizing that we've got to set the right example, and we can't be being unprofessional or inappropriate, and if you can do that, and it's really, I think, I was a young girl. I gave her some practice, tennis balls, and she came over when I was walking out, thanked me, was so small and has such a quiet little voice, but it's that setting the example and being able to help everybody, grow like that. So I think that's probably, the biggest thing we can ask ourselves, when that happened, did you feel good about that?
Mm-hmm.
And my answer to that was, yeah, I felt great about that. I controlled my sports language.
Yeah.
And as when I was, a younger man, my two daughters, if I slipped up, they would tell me not to use my golf words in the house. And so, like, I understand. And so it's being aware of that, and it is being aware of that and realizing that they're paying attention. So if you're going to set that example, okay, they're paying attention, and the impact that you have on others, because it's a perception.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody watching this podcast is going to have a perception of me when they're done, and nobody's perception is going to be wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I've worked very hard not to use my golf words during this.
I haven't heard one golf word.
I've worked very hard, and it's being conscious about that and recognizing and the awareness.
Yeah. I mean, and you know what about that I love so much is this idea that even encouraging others to lead yourself really comes back to you.
Sure.
It's back to you setting the example. I think sometimes when we're in positions of authority, whether that's a parent or a manager, we want to tell people what they need to do. And a lot of times, if we just be that ourselves, kind of be that person ourselves, be that example, that does way more than trying to, tell people what to do. So it kind of all comes back to self again, essentially, even when you're trying to influence other people.
Absolutely, it does. And it goes right back to that, because, it's when you tell people to do something and they see you not doing it, okay, then they're all of a sudden that trust starts to go away, and the believability and your credibility goes away. Mm-hmm. And they're saying, well, that's easy for you to say, but you're not doing it. Okay. So, when you tell us, you guys got to get here on time. Okay. And you need to be time, and you can't leave early or whatever. And you're doing that. Mm-hmm. What are you doing? That's the, old adage that, do as I say, not as I do. Mm-hmm. Well, that doesn't go over very well with anybody. And they're like, yeah, I don't think so. Mm-hmm. So you just, it is what the employees see, or anybody in a relationship where you're trying to influence them, and they're looking and saying, do I believe you or not? And how are you going to establish that credibility? Mm-hmm. Doing what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
And it's if I tell you to do something, it's this is what we want. And a lot of times, I think my wife and I laugh all the time about, we never keep score. Okay, there's no scorekeeping out there. And we never have a discussion about, well, I'm not taking out the trash because I took it out the last time, or I'm not folding these clothes because we never do that. And so I think the mindset about that is there's no keeping score, and we're trying to help each other and help everybody grow.
Yeah.
So I think there's a part of this that is, and I do a lot. And, there's this whole concept of givers and takers, and it's really interesting to weave that into watching how this all interacts with being able to lead yourself.
Yeah, and not keeping score.
Yeah.
Think about that. That may be another golden thought I need to put into practice. Yeah, because if you're focusing on kind of what you're giving in the relationship and doing the best, then what's the point? Are we in a competition? Like, what's the point of the score? That's a really good point. Yeah.
Well, exactly right. And again, how is that going to come across?
Yeah.
Okay. And so when you think about the relationship, where do you want to be in that relationship? And what's your whole mindset about that? And so to me, it's why are you keeping score?
Yeah. What's your
purpose?
Purpose?
Yes, it's because you're trying to make sure, that I don't do any more than I absolutely have to. Okay.
Yeah.
It's almost like this whole concept now of the quietly quitting out there. I'm sort of like, really, are you kidding me? You all, and there has been a big change about, folks that are, just looking for jobs versus careers. And now I see that all the time now. And it's really interesting to me. And I think some of it's just a pure generational thing, and just an age difference. But you're giving me a perception, okay? If you're never going the extra mile, okay, if you don't take initiative, and if you sit there and wait and say, well, I'm going to do what you tell me to do, okay, and tell me to do it, and then I'll go do it. I'd love to have a nickel for every time I did a counseling session where I talked to the employee and I explained to him, I said, let me tell you something. If I have to tell you what to do, we don't really need you.
Right. Yes.
Okay. So let's talk about that. Let's make sure you understand that going forward. Because what you're really telling us is, I don't have the ability to think for myself, or I'm not willing to think for myself. I don't want to invest that much in you all because I don't really care. So that's problematic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's another aspect of leading self, like being able to figure out what needs to be done and getting it done. That proactive nature, that's definitely a part of it. Yeah.
Sure it is. And then thinking about, okay, well, I'm doing this because I want to give them the perception that, I care about this. Okay. I care about why we're here. I care about what we're doing. So I'm going to be proactive and start to do this going forward.
I love that. And it, I love the idea about the example. It reminds me of something when you said that. I was thinking, I was in a workshop one time and they were talking about parenting. I'm trying to think if they were talking about parenting or marriage. I think it was parenting. And they were saying the best thing you can do for your child is grow up yourself. Like best thing and I was like, the best thing I can do is to be as mature as, the best version of me that is possible. And that sets the best example for your child. So this idea of, if you can lead yourself well, that alone can influence other people without you having to say a bunch of stuff that they probably don't want to hear anyway, honestly. So
absolutely, it is. Yeah. And I will tell you, it's a funny conversation. I was actually in Rotary this morning. We were having a conversation before the program started. And one of my fellow retirees was talking about how he just loved to do yard work. He loved to do yard work. And he said, it's really interesting to me. He made a comment, the observation that every house he had moved into, the more he worked in his yard, the more all the neighbors' yards improved. Okay. And he said it wasn't a competition, but by him improving his, everybody looked at it and said, well, yeah, man, we should do this. And so it's setting that example. It's doing that. People, I say this all the time. People do what people see. Okay. So if you have a manager that yells at people out there, that disrespects them, whether it's a coach on a team with the other team, the other kids, people do what people see.
Yeah. I love that. So this has been so good. I appreciate your insights. I have my golden thoughts. Kelvin's going to be so happy. I'm going to be a whole new person.
Yes.
But any closing, I want to do a lightning round where I just ask you a few questions. You can give me short answers just so people can get to know you a little better. But before we do that, any closing thoughts on this topic of kind of leading self?
I think it's just you have to want to grow and be honest with yourself. And I always look at this as trying to be at least 3-dimensional, okay, and not 1-dimensional and sort of just floating on the surface, okay. I think there's a lot of folks that float on the surface. They're victims and say, "Oh, this is terrible. This happened," and they just accept what's happened to them and don't do any changes. So I think it's owning this and being able to make those changes going forward.
Yeah. Not float on the surface. I love that. Not just let life take you from here to there, but be an agency in your own life. Like, I get that.
Yes. We have a lot of employees that are what I call cruise ship passengers. Okay. They're just, I'm here. Y'all tell me what to do and tell me where to be and and they're just cruise ship passengers. They're not taking really any ownership of where are we going.
I love that. Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts. I super appreciate this. It's good seeing you as always.
It's always good seeing you.
Yes, good to see you. So these are 3 quick questions just so people can get to know you a little better. And the first one is, what's the most unique work experience that you've had?
I think the most unique work experience is running your own company. If there's ever an opportunity to do that, and I got to experience a little bit of that when I was with the utility, because we got to buy a startup non-regulated group and run that, and I had a great time doing that, and I love doing that. But it was easy to do that because I had a multi-billion-dollar company that I could always go to get money from out there. So now starting my own up, where my multi-million-dollar company wasn't there, it was however much cash I had in my pocket. Just been a great experience, and I've loved it. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Oh, I love that. 22 years in. I love that. I wouldn't
trade it for the world.
That's awesome. So what is one thing, and yes, and thank you for encouraging me too, because I would say the same thing. I'm not nearly 22 years in, but it's been amazing. So
you're good. You're good. What, 10, 11 years in?
7.
Okay, 7.
Yeah, I passed the 5-year mark. I'll take it.
There you go. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So what is one thing you do consistently to enjoy your life?
I love playing competitive sports. So I play tennis, squash, golf, pickleball, you name it. If I can play, if it's competitive and I can get outside and I can exercise, I love doing that. And I think it's also a good time to really think about what's happened during the day and how things unfolded. So reflection time.
Yeah, I love that. I knew about tennis. I didn't know about squash and pickleball. That's you're very active. Yeah.
We sort of stopped playing squash during the pandemic because you're in a enclosed court and we got a little nervous about that. So we moved to pickleball outside and so in the farther away. So yes. And I've been a tennis player since I was, in high school. So
yeah. Pickleball's all the rage right now. So
it is. It is. So
it is. Okay. And last question, and you shared several of these with us, but what's a word of wisdom or piece of advice you like to live by?
Here's what I'll tell you is, I I try not to be a person of success. Okay. I want to be a person of value. I
Hmm.
want to add value wherever I go. And I think when you can think about that, it leads to success. But if you're trying to be a person of success, you're going to probably make short-term bad decisions.
Mhm.
And you won't make those if you think about, am I really adding value to this? I tell my clients all the time, if I'm not adding any value, why are you paying me?
Mhm.
Why aren't you firing me?
Mhm. Yeah, a person of value, adding value. Yes, yeah, I can see how that motivates different thoughts and actions actually. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Well, thank you so much for joining, Trey. I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate your time.
I'm glad to do it. Always, always great. You were one of my favorite and outstanding employees.
Good.
I'm tickled to death.
Oh, good. I wasn't a cruise ship
I'm so
passenger.
proud of you. That's what I'm really proud of.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you all so much for joining the podcast. You can find Trey's business online at eSOURCESHR.com. We'll also have it in the show notes along with ways to contact him or his business. And thank you all for joining. You can always find me on Instagram at Arlene_pace_green. And I will see you next time. Be well.